I really do feel like I'm burnt out on these. Oh well, I'll at least finish this one off. As I said it would be next. I mean, I just took all of yesterday off because I didn't want to play it, but... figure out something to do after this one. Showdown. Here it is. Ugh. Eek. Seem to be in a bit of trouble. Something like that. Dead? Someone hit him hard. Me? Please. The cops should be here any minute. I'm in your hands. Should it come to that. Headache. I'm sweaty. I can admit it. I'm nervous. Good morning. Good morning, sir. You look tense, Justice. Wound up tight? Wound up, sir? No, I'm loose. I'm fine. That screeching noise. Is that your voice? I suppose it's to be expected. Your first trial and it's a homicide. I guess justice doesn't start small, eh? I'm fine. I got up at 5 AM to do my chords of still voice workout. I'm fine. Ah, that explains it. I did detect a certain rasping quality to your speech. I overdid it again. As you know, your client today is a good friend of mine. I wouldn't want to let him down, if you get my drift. Drift gone, sir. I'm all over that drift. As it happens, I dined with him the night of the murder. I can't let this case fall through. Yes, I'm fine, sir. One more thing. Don't say you're fine quite so much. People might take you the wrong way. I'll be preparing our case. You might want to introduce yourself to the client. My name is Apollo Justice. If it isn't clear already, I'm a new attorney. Today is my first trial. Not that I'm worried or anything. The defendant has been accused of murder. My boss wants to help him out, of course, and so do I. I mean, there's no way he did it. Not him. No way. Whoa. Good, morning. Morning. So it's up to you today. First trial. Nervous. Meeting him. Cardiac arrest. I think I'm supposed to say something. Help. So, you're... Fine. I'm fine. Mr. Fine, is it? I did remember you having an odd name. Oh, we're off to a great start. Are you sure you're okay? I mean, with me? Mr. Gavin is a top-notch defense attorney. And he's your friend, so why? You'll see. You can do it. Be confident. I'm really sorry this happened to you. I mean, It's time, shall we? Yes, sir. Okay, I need to focus. First trial. Here comes justice.
The court is now in session.
The prosecution is ready, Your Honor.
Defences are fine. Ready, Your Honor. I'm going blank. Don't panic. Too late.
Your name was Mr. Justice, and this is your first trial.
Yes, Your Honor. But I'm fine. Really.
Are you quite sure? Your voice sounds a bit strained. Mr. Gavin?
Yes, Your Honor.
I was under the impression that you would be headed up this case.
That was my intention, yes. However, a defense attorney must always see to his client's wishes. My client specifically requested Mr. Justice.
Of course he wants justice. But to entrust his case to this greenhorn, why? I do not exaggerate when I say that you're the best defense attorney in town, Mr. Gavin.
Okay, so Gavin's got trial experience. Fine, but does he have cords of steel?
Let's begin. The defendant may enter the courtroom. This is truly an unfortunate turn of events. I'm sorry we had to meet again under these circumstances.
Long time no
see, Mr. Wright.
Let's put the past behind us, shall we? These days I'm merely Phoenix Wright, piano player. Mr. Wright, how could this have happened?
I won't speak of it further then. If the prosecution would be so kind as to explain the charges, Mr. Payne.
To think, I saw you enter this room a fresh attorney, and now I'll see you leave in chains.
Winston Payne, subtle as ever, I see.
Ahem. The crime occurred at the Borscht Bowl Club, a Russian restaurant. The defendant, Phoenix Wright, took the victim, a customer, and he hit him. Wham! On the head. Smack! Killed him cold.
A customer at the restaurant, you say? And the defendant, you say he was?
The pianist for the club, it seems.
Phoenix Wright. Pianist?
This is the weapon that took the victim's life. A bottle of grape juice. Grape juice is apparently our defendant's drink of choice.
The court accepts the deadly bottle as evidence.
Something to note, Justice. All evidence is filed in the court record. Make a practice of checking it frequently. Court record. Right, I've heard of that. Use the court record button to look at the evidence so far. I'm confident in your ability to handle this. Right, the court record button. Sounds like it's time for some hands-on action.
So, the victim was a customer at this restaurant. But just who was this, Shaddy Smith fellow?
We believe he was a traveller, Your Honour.
A traveller?
According to his passport, he had been out of the country for a number of years. He had only returned to this country recently, though his place of residence is unclear.
Might he had some sort of connection with the defendant?
That, too, is unclear at present, Your Honour. We believe they first met at the Borscht Ball Club on the night of the crime.
If they had only just met, then why murder? Perhaps the victim slighted the defendant's piano playing.
That doesn't appear to have been the case. No, the motive had nothing to do with the defendant's lack of playing skill. At least, not piano playing. I'll let this photo explain what I mean. As we can see, a game of poker was in progress at the scene of the crime.
Wait a second. Isn't poker gambling... That's a crime in and of itself.
Indeed, it appears our defendant has fallen to become the basest sort of criminal.
It is true that the defendant was engaged in a game of poker with the victim. Yet it was only that, a game, in the purest sense, a competition, Your Honour.
A competition?
Yes, a test of wits, a silent clash of passions. Only the cards, their backs wreathed in blue flame, knew its final outcome.
Come again?
The cards on the table had blue backs, Your Honour. I believe the defense was waxing poetic in an attempt to mystify those present and impress women.
That will be our first order of business here, then. To find out more about this fatal game of cards. Very well, defendant. You will testify to the court about the poker competition held the night of the crime.
My pleasure. This is it. My first trial. Here goes nothing. I'm a pianist by trade, yet I can hardly play at all. My real job is to take on interested customers over at the poker table. Normally play in the competition. In there are the club's main attractions. The rules are simple. Play a game of poker using 2 decks of cards. That's all it is, a game. And our customers are happy.
A pianist who can't play piano.
Better than a defense attorney who can't defend.
Very well. The defense may begin the cross-examination.
Right, Your Honour. This cross-examination. Don't blow it. Are you all right? You're sweating bullets. Bullets? Where? It's a figure of speech, Justice. Your voice sounds strained and raspy, too. Oh, my brain feels strained and raspy, sir. You've watched me perform cross-examinations many times. But you've never done one yourself, have you? Care for a refresher? What to do? Should I ask Mr. Gavin for a refresher course in cross-examination? No. No need for help here, sir. I think I've got this one covered. I think you better do more than think. You know it or you don't. Fine. The court is still ready for battle. Weapons, press and present. Find any inconsistencies, any lies in the testimony, and reveal them to the court. That is cross-examination. Learn it, know it, do it. Inconsistencies, lies, Phoenix Wright. As if Phoenix Wright would never lie, and it's up to me to prove it.
The defense may begin the cross-examination.
You can hardly play? Oh, I play sometimes, when customers demand it. So I play them one song. That's usually all they want. supposed to be a boast just now? The title of pianist is a mask, a respectable face I wear for the world at large.
Then why are you really at the Borscht Bowl Club?
They pay you just to play poker? That would seem to be the case. I am a professional after all.
No, I detect pride in that statement. It's just hard for an honest, hard-working member of society like me to imagine.
Yes. Your imagination was always a bit limited, Winston.
What?
I played poker for 7 years in that little room. And I've never lost. Once. What? You see why the customers come now. Defeat the undefeated poker champion. It's quite a draw. That is, I'm quite a draw. Oh, wait, you've never lost once? Not even one time? As I said, I'm a professional. He's played poker for 7 years and not lost once? Is that even possible? The crime scene photo is an attraction? That's quite a history, actually. The Borscht Bowl Club used to be a gathering spot for black market types back in the day. Black market? All in the past. Things like the black market are only on the silver screen nowadays. Suffice it to say, there were a lot of deals being made under the table. Right there in that room.
A smoky room, gambling hoods, you know. Just looking at this picture makes me feel bad.
The bosses gather around the table, cutting deals, safe from the eyes of the law. Meanwhile, a goon keeps watch through the small window. I can practically picture it now. The window does look like it would be good for keeping a lookout, but little else. There are a few other tricks to it, though it was common knowledge to our regulars. At any rate, they come to play poker in a room steeped in history. Despite the dark past, it was all just good, clean fun. Two decks of cards? A simple measure to prevent cheating. If you alternate two decks, no one can slip in cards.
There's something else I noticed. In addition to the cards on the table, there are some lying scattered on the floor.
Precisely. Cards on the table, cards upon the floor. Each one forming a complete deck. The crime scene painted blue by a sad sweep of cards. It's poetic, really. Incidentally, we use two types of cards at the club. One deck of cards was red, the other blue.
As I recall, in poker you make 5 card hands. I can see now how it would be easy to cheat.
Yes, a game of hands.
This competition you're talking about. I believe the court understands the nature of the game sufficiently.
That's right. It was a simple game after all.
Are you sure? Huh? People are not murdered over simple games, Mr. Justice. Defendant, you were in the room the very moment that the crime occurred, but you claim no connection to the crime.
Now that's strange.
What's strange?
I was testifying about the competition that night. Asking me about the crime at this point is against the rules, Your Honor. Boss, I expected to hear a cry of objection from the defense. I completely let that one slip by. Don't despair yet, Justice. Right, there's something I'd like made clear. Namely, your connection to the case in hand. and I'd like to hear it from you. Sure, why not?
Very well. The defendant will amend his testimony.
Just one little press. I've got myself a whole new testimony. I plead silence regarding the murder, but I will say I never touched the murder weapon. Silence? The defendant has the right to refuse to testify. I haven't forgotten everything about the law. Why? I clearly put you at a disadvantage. And it's your job to turn that around in our favour, yes? Great. Like I didn't have enough to do already. Justice. Didn't you detect anything odd about that testimony? Huh? Wait. Something you said did ring a little strangely. Just one thing. Now, what was it? When you figure it out, I'd suggest presenting evidence. Evidence that contradicts the testimony. Contradiction in Mr. Wright's testimony? Why? Better check the court record. Can't imagine Mr. Wright lying in a testimony. Isn't it a little early to be jumping to conclusions? This is your first cross-examination. Take it slow. If you need more information, don't forget to press. Right, I got it. I'm fine. Time to listen to that testimony again. So, you say you didn't touch the murder weapon in this grape juice bottle, right? So I said.
Something the matter, Mr. Justice?
Too bad our new defense attorney never learned how to play dumb.
What's this, Mr. Payne?
I examined the bottle in question, you see. It was covered with the defendant's fingerprints.
Objection!
No need to shout, Mr. Justice. I can hear you just fine.
Excess yelling can damage the judge's ears and our case. But what about my cause of still? Anyway, what's so strange about fingerprints on a bottle in a restaurant?
That's true. The prints alone don't prove.
Oh, they wouldn't prove a thing if they were normal fingerprints.
Huh?
But the fingerprints on the murder weapon were upside down.
Upside down? What does that mean?
It means he was holding the bottle inverted. And there can be only one reason for that. Yes. To brain someone with the bottle. Ah!
Mr. Gavin, I think things just took a turn for the worse. Oh, I see no problem, Justice. The only thing that matters is the truth. There's a good reason for everything. You'll see.
Defendant, can you explain your fingerprints on this bottle to the court?
I stand by my plea of silence regarding the murder. For now.
Not very cooperative, are you? This could hurt your case.
I'm sure he's uncooperative because he's hiding something. There must be some reason.
Objection!
Your Honour, you seem to have forgotten something.
And what might that be, Mr. Gavin?
On the night of the crime, who was it who reported the murder to the police?
Reported?
Well, That was the defendant, Mr. Wright. But still, that...
Really?
Yes, well, according to the case file, the murder was reported from near the scene by a call from the defendant's cell phone.
Near the scene?
Let's take a look at a diagram of the murder scene, shall we? The victim was murdered in a small room in a basement 2 floors down from ground level. Of course, cell phones can't get reception so far down. The defendant used the stairs in this hallway to go above ground. The call came from the first floor of the restaurant.
I see. And this is the phone that made the call?
The defendant could have just fled the scene of the crime if he so chose. Yet he fulfilled his duty as a citizen and reported it to the authorities. And you claim he is being uncooperative?
I say, Mr. Gavin, I better not waste this.
I think the prosecution has toyed with our client enough for the time being.
Toyed? I assure you no one is more serious about...
What was it you said? The defendant was in the room the very moment that the crime occurred. How can you possibly know this?
That's a good question. How indeed?
The answer is simple, Your Honor. The prosecution has a decisive witness.
You're as good as they say you are.
So, someone else was in the room the night of the crime? That must mean they witnessed the crime. Everything up till now has been a warm-up, Justice. Are you ready?
Very well. The prosecution may call its first witness to the stand.
The witness will state her name and profession.
Hold on just a moment. Where's the witness?
I surmise that she has been frightened by the defense's demonic-looking horns. So I used a little hair gel. Relax, people.
Have no fear. If any horns point in your direction, this court will cut them off.
You are sure?
I swear it on my gavel. Please come out.
Isn't violence against hair a crime, Your Honor?
Well, if you are sure it is okay.
Now the prosecution. Wait a minute. Would the prosecution care to explain the witness's paraphernalia?
Yes. She is a professional, Your Honor. Those are merely the tools of her trade.
And that would be...
My name is Olga Really. I'm employed as waitress in Borscht Ball Club restaurant.
Then why the camera?
Of course, it is my pride to serve borscht in this naming restaurant. But I also perform, it is said, other service.
I take it one of these other services is taking the customers' pictures.
Like, for example, this one.
That's the defendant.
Indeed. On the night of the murder, the man in white hat is one who has gone kaput.
Indeed. That is the victim. Order! Order! This is quite a piece of evidence to casually drop into our laps.
The same way as I drop cold bowls of borscht on laps of customers, casually.
And the court will casually accept this new evidence.
Now, witness, where were you at the time of the murder?
I was in room... the hideout, we call it. Excuse me? The hideout? It is room where famous gangster. That guy was arrested. It's room where murder took place.
What?
You look about as surprised. It is lovely. I will post by courtroom door later for you. Our photos will be numbered, and you will write which one you want copy of. So there were 3 people in the room at the time of the crime. The victim, Shelley Smith, Mr. Wright, and Olga O'Reilly, a witness. If Mr. Wright isn't the killer, that means...
Very well. Witness, you will testify to the court about that night's events.
That night, customer asked me to deal cards for game. It was called Both Players Played with Hats on, da. The victim, he plays whole time with his hands on the locket at his neck. And last hand is done, but something terrible has happened, da. That man flew at victim and is strangling him to death.
Incidentally, who won the game?
Isn't it obvious? The winner was the victim, Mr. Smith.
That's ridiculous. Because Mr. Wright can't lose. Justice. Maybe you can come up with a more legitimate objection. But he hadn't lost in 7 years.
Take it from me, kid. It happens. I didn't lose a case my first 7 years as prosecutor either. Incidentally, I have some evidence here. These are the poker chips, as they lay at the very moment of the crime. The hand and chips on this side belong to the defendant, Mr. Wright. Those on the far side belong to the victim, Mr. Smith.
Chips, you say?
Yes. Imagine that poker is ball. Your hand is your army and the chips are the spoils.
I knew that. After all, in my youth, I was the poker head of courtroom number 3.
Why was that part automatic? Jesus fucking... I think he means poker face.
Looking at this picture, it does seem that most of the chips are on the victim's side of the table. Very well, the defense may cross-examine the witness.
You were dealing cards? Do you do this often? Duh, I am doing this. If customer wishes it, I serve anything. Borscht, cards, more borscht. It is my work.
It's good to hear of a place that hasn't forgotten the meaning of service.
Welcome you to Borscht Bowl Club, where borscht is as warm as the waitresses. Thank you for not handing out flyers during the cross-examination. It's already April. How could it be cold? At the Borscht Bowl Club, we have pride on authentic rustic Russian restaurant theme. Outside it is city in spring, but inside it is always as cold as Mother Russia. No way am I going there. When it comes to hot borscht, cold is best seasoning, da. locket?
I believe it was good luck charmed. He grabbed it many times as he played that night.
Yes, he must have thought as though it might carry him to the moon and the stars. Though if it was small enough to fit around his neck, it wouldn't have much lift.
Defense would like a clarification. This is a locket we're talking about. I mean, pendant with a pitch in it, right? Not a rocket?
Well, of course, I knew that. It was probably a pendant shaped like a rocket. That's why she called it that.
No, look, it's a locket. It's considered bad form to poke fun at the hard of hearing in our society. Hard of hearing or hard of understanding?
So, what happened next?
Something terrible?
The defense will refrain from needlessly shouting.
Oh, sorry. I need to seriously reconsider this vocal training thing.
Now, Miss Uli, can you tell us what happened?
I was so frightened. I trembled with fear.
The defendant would never do such a thing.
Well, now, can't say I've ever heard the defense try this tactic.
If possible, please refrain from embarrassing me.
Still, why would anyone do something like this over a game of poker?
It is because defendant has lost game.
Yes, a crushing defeat for a man undefeated. So it always is with men like him. Winners make sore losers. Oh, how the mighty fall.
Go ahead. I believe you know what it is you need to do. Right, sir. Leave it to me. There were only 3 people in the room at the time of the murder. The victim, Shaddy Smith, Mr. Wright, and... But Mr. Wright is in the kennel. I've got you now, Aurelie. Oh, really? Strangled, you say? That's odd.
The normal customers only combushed.
No, I mean, this report shows that the victim died of a blow to the head. Miss Orley, really now? Did you witness the crime?
Eek.
Looking at the picture, it does seem like he was hit. He's still wearing his hat and everything.
Yet, it is a fact that he was hit, Your Honor. Here's a photo we took of the victim with his hat off during our investigation.
Well, that's quite shocking, isn't it? This head certainly was hit.
But I have seen it happen. The defendant, he lunged at victim, his neck.
Oh, really, Miss Aurelie? I think I've caught you in your own lie this time. Justice, I admire your enthusiasm, but perhaps you should think this through once more. What do you mean? I found a contradiction. There's one thing in her testimony that troubles me.
Very well. It seems we shall continue the cross-examination.
Such a thing as thinking too much. This horse is dead. Let's stop beating it. There's such a thing as thinking aloud too much too. You know, there was one curious part in her testimony, just like Mr. Gavin said. But what does it mean?
Mr. Justice, would you care to explain what it is you're thinking so intensely about?
Recall the testimony, Your Honour. The victim played with his hand on a locket at his neck, I believe she said.
I hope you aren't about to raise an objection to the witness's
grammar. No, but look at this photograph. Do you see a locket on the victim's neck? Well done, Justice. I'm impressed. Only you'll be able to handle this. But what does it mean?
If we are to believe this witness's testimony as is, then the locket disappeared following the victim's death.
Lockets don't just disappear, Your Honour. It's quite simple when you think about it. If the locket is gone, someone must have taken it off, no? Taken it off? Oh wait, you don't mean... The defendant wasn't strangling the victim at all. He was taking off his locket. Wouldn't that explain it?
Ah. Defendant, what do you have to say to this? Say,
Yes?
I just noticed this, but you have something hanging around your neck, don't you?
Oh, you mean this? Yes, it's a locket with a photograph inside. Photo of my daughter.
Come again?
Mr. Wright, you have a daughter?
We confirmed it at the time of the arrest. The picture in the locket is indeed Mr. Wright's daughter.
So Mr. Wright has a locket too. Don't I buy that this is just a coincidence?
Well now, if the results of this poker game led to the murder, perhaps we should hear a bit more about the outcome of the game.
Well, the testimony won't really be necessary. It's clear the defendant lost badly.
Miss, really? You will testify to the court about the game played between the victim and the defendant.
The game began with 3,500 points in chips for each man. Those chips come in two sizes, small and large. The one who was winning it was victim. For last hand, defendant play with all chips on table and lose. The moment loss was decided, defendant grabs bottle from table and...
Indeed, looking at this picture, it does seem to be a one-sided game.
As the court knows, poker was the defendant's life. Failure must have been a bitter pill to swallow.
How many times have I heard these words? I'd done it in a fit of anger, Your Honour, and now...
Oh, for fuck's sake, why is there random fucking auto text everywhere?
A common tale, but true.
Thinks the judge watches too many old court movies. Mr. Wright said he hasn't lost in 7 years, so this testimony must be wrong. Where is the usual starting points? Are any special rules used?
No, not special. Usual game, usual rules.
If each man bet only 3,500 points, then the total would be... exactly no, 7,000 points.
Please, this isn't calculus. It's not even long division. Are the chips in this photo all the chips that we used?
Ah, of course.
Something's fishy with these chips. Should I press harder? Maybe you can explain a bit about these chips.
Explain? Or what is there to be explained?
Poker chips are poker chips. They're not fish and chips. Not a chip off the old block. Not the
Thanks. Ugh, now that I pressed her, I better ask something. What are these chips worth? Are they in dollars or rubles or even...
As I have been saying before, it was a game, not gambling. Hard perhaps for capitalists to understand. Two types of chips. 100 points chip and 1,000 point chip. It is not money,
Justice? Sir? Don't you find her comment interesting? Always a monster. I'd have it added to her testimony myself.
Well, does the defense want the witness to add to her testimony?
Yes, I do think this deserves further scrutiny. Add it to the testimony. I wish I knew where I was going with this.
Very well, witness, if you would be so kind.
Your Honor. One kind of chip is worth 100 points. Other kind is worth 1,000. Two kinds in all.
Mr. Gavin said this testimony is important. To be honest, I have no idea why.
Mr. Justice, do the court a favor and think of what you want to say before raising your hand. We are not in kindergarten.
Sorry, I'm fine. I think of something to ask. Quick. The two types of chips. The small ones are 100 and the big ones are 1,000. Right? Right, of course.
Don't waste our time.
Is that all?
Yeah. Great. Mr. Gavin made me stop her, and now I'm the one who looks dumb. Oh, Justice. Please try not to embarrass me like that. Huh? Who? Me? There's a clear contradiction in the information you have in your hands. What? It's a simple matter of calculation. Go on. Try it. You're not in kindergarten after all. Calculation? You're telling me that Mr. Wright, undefeated for 7 whole years, was losing?
It must have been a most unlucky day for him. I'm glad I did not take other picture of him. It would break camera, certainly. The chips, they went always to victim side of table.
So, you're telling us it was a one-sided game?
One-sided and...
Last hand?
was largest points of any hand. The defendant's hand, it was excellent. He tried to use it to take victory from behind.
It appears that both the defendant and the victim's hands are in this picture. This is truly an excellent hand. However, so is the victim's.
One with highest numbers wins, so defendant loses.
The victim, Mr. Smith, had a stronger hand than the defendant and crushed him. I believe that explains what occurred next.
Once cards lay down on the table, it happened.
What happened next?
Even to think of it now, I shake and tremble. I did not believe such thing would happen.
What such thing?
Please, you must believe. I had no idea. How could such thing occur?
What such thing?
Yet. The defendant had been hitting the victim. I saw it all happen right before me. I saw bottle coming down on victim's head.
Decisive, isn't it, Your Honor? My witness saw the very moment of the crime.
Remember, your first goal is to gather information. Yes, sir. Look out, contradiction. Here comes justice. You're sure it was the victim who won? Absolutely sure?
It seems our new attorney is a bit confused. A glance at the picture is enough to tell you who won, if you're not in kindergarten.
Just for safety's sake, could you explain the problem to the court?
Of course, Your Honour. In this photo I see small chips and I see large chips. Tell me, which were worth 1,000 points?
Why, the big ones, of course. Duh.
Oh, I thought so too, but then the totals don't add up.
The totals.
Let's review what the witness told us. Each man started with 3,500 points in chips, and the combined total value of the chips was 7,000 points.
Yes, if my calculations are correct. Let's see. 3 plus 1, carry the 5.
They are, Your Honour. Now, look at this photo that allegedly shows all the chips. The big ones are worth 1,000, and the small chips are worth 100. Would you add them up?
How much is it?
Look yourself, what in kindergarten are you? 10,600 points. And the chips don't add up. This clearly contradicts the witness's testimony.
But why? How could this be?
Exactly, Justice. Now that you know the what, you must determine the why. Right. There's only one possible way to explain this contradiction. Each man began the game with 3,500 points. If all the chips are indeed shown in this photograph, then there can be only one answer.
Well, what is it?
The value of the chips was the other way around.
What?
Want to know what I think? The small chips were worth 1,000 points, not the big ones.
Madness! Not a madness!
Show me that photograph of the chips again. There are 6 small chips and 10 large chips. Why, that does make 7,000 points when you add them up.
Excellent work, Justice. It's almost as though you figured it out by yourself. Well, I'm just glad I was the one who said it.
wait. The value of the chips may be different, but that changes nothing.
Indeed, the victim did have the large number of chips still.
Ah! Exactly. If the small chips are 1,000 points, and the large chips are 100, let's do a little math. Add up the points for each side of the table.
The victim, Mr. Smith, had 2,900 points.
Keep doing this game, you're really going to piss me off.
But Mr. Wright had 4,100 points.
At least I think that's what it said. Fucking auto text. Well now, seems that Mr. Wright was winning that night after all.
That's impossible.
My client had even less reason to kill the victim. After all, he was winning. Now, Miss O'Reilly, you must have known the true value of the chips, since you were there at the scene of the crime, weren't you?
Order! Order! It appears our defendant has lost his motive, and Mr. Wright's supposed defeat never happened. We must now ask ourselves whether we can trust that. Excuse me, what is it, Miss O'Reilly?
I did not want to be saying this, but actually, you see,
See what, Miss O'Reilly? What do we see?
in the last hand, there was cheat.
A cheat? You don't mean a trick?
Wait, what do you mean? A scam?
They're all the same thing.
Yes, there was cheat in last hand. And that is why game ends with chips as they are.
Great, just great. First we have lying, now cheating. Well, this case certainly has taken a turn. Really interesting.
Witness, you will please testify to the court. Tell us about this cheating in the final hand.
Last hand, both men had full house. And there is 4 of each card in deck, from ace to king. If you look at both men's hand, cheat is more obvious. The next moment, game becomes argument. The defendant's trick was exposed. He took bottom in his hand. Oh, Mr. Smith.
Miss O'Reilly, why did you not tell the court about this from the very beginning? Thought I smelled a cover-up here. Well, folks, it's time to throw back the covers.
A full house is a very high-scoring hand. Not easy to make in my experience.
That alone is enough to suspect less than scrupulous tactics.
Mr. Gavin? What's a full house?
Lawyers these days, you don't know your poker.
I can't say this bodes well for your case or career.
What is this? Some kind of secret court poker thing? Justice, you know the terms 1 pair, 2 pair, and 3 of a kind, yes? Yeah, no problem. 2 cards with the same number makes a pair, and 3 makes a 3 of a kind. Good. Now picture a hand with 1 pair and 1 3 of a kind. That's a full house. That doesn't sound very easy to make, does it?
You can see each player's hand in this photo.
They both have full houses.
You forget there's an easy way to make a full house and go undefeated for 7 years. You cheat.
The defense may cross-examine the witness.
He did cheat in the last hand. That still leaves one important question. Mr. Wright lost that hand? Who's ever heard of a professional con man losing when they cheat? Just how hard is it to make a full house anyway?
It is quite hard, though. It is making a pair and a three of a kind at the same time.
I guess that's right.
Very difficult, to be sure. You can take my word as the poker head of courtroom number 3.
Very difficult, but it's not impossible.
Okay, full house hard. So I'm questioning a waste of time. Or of each card, you say?
There is one spade, one diamond, one heart, and one club for each card. It is interesting fact that this number 4 comes from number of seasons.
You don't say.
Now, did you know that the cards are numbered 1 to 13? Add all the cards in a deck and you get 364 a year.
You don't say. Isn't that one day short?
That's why each deck has 2 jokers. They say the second joker stands for the leap year. Thus, you have a perfect representation of the year, all in a deck of cards.
You don't say. You have to be in this courtroom for a year if it keeps going like this. How was it clear?
Well, the defendant, he played a 5th ace.
A 5th ace?
I still remember both hands very well. Mr. Smith's hand has 3 aces. And Mr. Wright's 2.
Obviously, cheating was afoot, or perhaps I should say, a hand.
Oh no, perhaps this can be added to the testimony without Mr. Payne's joke.
Very well. The witness will add this detail to her testimony, please.
Mr. Smith's hand has 3 aces, and Mr. Wright's 2. It is 5 aces in total.
5th ace?
It should not exist, no? I still remember both hands very well. Mr. Smith's hand has 3 aces, and Mr. Wright's 2.
Well, where did this card come from then?
Perhaps we should ask the defendant that very question. Adding cards to a deck is no less serious a taboo than forging evidence in a court of law.
No. Perhaps it's time for you to say something, Justice.
You bet. I've no intention of staying quiet. Not me. No, sir.
Gotta find some contradicting evidence fast. Do you recall what the men were arguing about?
I believe so. The victim, he shouts, "You are a cheater," and then the defendant shouts something like, "I have objection."
Shouting objection, eh? Old habits are hard to break. First he bluffed his way through the courtroom, now he bluffs his way through life.
Oh, but Mr. Wright lost the hand. It seems to cast a shadow of doubt on Mr. Smith.
Humiliation from losing, even when cheating. That is what set fire to defendant's heart.
So what did the flaming defendant do next?
By bottle, are you referring to this?
The defendant using this bottle to...
This behavior is an admission of cheating by the defendant.
Why use a grape juice bottle?
You'd be surprised at what can be used as a weapon.
This juice is recommended drink of Borscht Ball Club, da? This year's vintage is remarkable for its hefty flavour.
Looking enough to brain a grown man, apparently. She says it was a serious competition. She says there was cheating. Justice, notice anything odd? Her testimony keeps changing. Now she says the defendant cheated. Actually, yes, I have noticed that. Let's get the truth about this cheating first, shall we? Right, leave it to me. Yes, the witness is mistaken.
Mistaken? But my name...
Look, this piece of evidence clearly contradicts what you said in your testimony.
That's the photo of the chips, is it not?
Justice? Perhaps you want to explain your point in a way that the judge can comprehend. In other words, use your finger to point out your point.
Yes, please point out the contradiction in this photo. What peculiar point contradicts the witness's testimony?
I can't look at the button. Okay. Miss O'Reilly, in your testimony you made the following claim. Mr. Smith's hand had 3 aces. But as you can clearly see, the victim's hand only held 2 aces.
Well, maybe the witness was simply confused. Perhaps it was the defendant's hand that held the 3rd ace in question.
Take another look at the evidence. As you can see, the defendant also had 2 aces in his hand. Where's this debate? I see cheating alright, and it's going on right here in this courtroom.
2 aces in each player's hands does make 4 aces total. Hardly proof of cheating.
Wait, please. It is true. I have seen it. The 5th ace. There was cheating. I swear to you.
That's odd. She must be lying that she's the most sincere I've seen her all day. You're right to trust your instincts. Mr. Gavin? Who knows what lies in store for us in the trial ahead? Your Honour, if I may, I have a suggestion.
What might that be, Mr. Gavin?
If you don't mind, perhaps we might examine the actual cards.
Odds?
Mr. Payne?
Yes?
Players' hands that night were set aside as evidence, were they not? The defence would like to request that the cards be shown to the court.
Very well. The prosecution will submit this evidence. Which will you examine? The victim's cards or the defendant's cards?
These cards don't prove cheating. What's going on? Nothing will. Which of these hands is more suspicious? It was the victim's hand that changed over the course of the witness's testimony. The defence requests time to examine Mr. Smith's cards.
Very well. Mr. Payne, if you would.
Very well.
Well, time's a wasting. Get to it, Justice.
Yes, sir.
When examining evidence, be sure to view it from all sides and angles. Try using the dials on the evidence viewer. That should give you a better perspective on the case. Okay, let's do this. What? Your Honor, look at this. One of the victim's cards. The back is a different colour.
That's impossible. But I put that card with its right side.
What was that, Miss O'Reilly?
No, wait. I nearly said that. I have.
Your Honor?
Mr. Gavin, yes?
Tell me, what is the easiest way to cheat at poker?
To cheat?
I'll tell you. One merely needs a friend, a comrade, shall we say. The dealer.
Ah,
Oi, so you mean... This witness? Miss O'Reilly? She's the cheater. A professional, I'd wager.
order!
Focus, Justice. Time to take the advantage of her. Of her mistake. Your Honor, please recall the testimony we just heard.
That's impossible. Would I put that card in Wright's hand?
Ergo, Miss O'Reilly conspired to cheat, not with my client, but with the victim, Mr. Shelley Smith. Not only did she cheat, she cheated poorly. Therefore, it's not hard to imagine an altercation between her and the victim.
What?
Wait, you don't mean... The defense isn't accusing the witness, Miss O'Reilly, are you?
Time for justice. There are 3 people in the room at the time of the incident. And if Mr. Wright isn't guilty, that means... I am. The defense accuses the witness, Miss O'Reilly, of murder.
Mr. Payne, where is your witness, Miss O'Reilly?
It appears she has lost consciousness, Your Honor.
Mr. Justice,
Honor?
it seems you presented a new possibility to the court. One suggesting a connection between the witness and the victim, Mr. Smith.
And that means...
This court cannot pronounce a verdict for the defendant at this time.
What?
Did it? They held out.
I see no point in prolonging the trial this day. The prosecution will need to make further inquiries.
Mr. Wright? You can't end the trial here, Your Honor. Not yet.
What nonsense is the defendant spewing now?
Think. One of the cards had a different coloured back. Don't you wonder what it means?
What are you doing, Mr. Wright? Raising objections when you're about to get off the hook? Ridiculous.
Mr. Payne, you of all people should know. Mr. White has a talent. Rather ridiculous. Perhaps we should get to the bottom of things. Let's clear up the facts about the game that fateful night.
As was said before, we alternated between 2 decks of cards that night.
That was said before.
The 2 decks at the club have different coloured backs, blue and red. 1 colour per deck. Why use different coloured backs? If we use the same colour, the 2 decks might get mixed. You use different colours and they still got mixed up. We used the red deck for the last game.
I see. But that's odd. For some reason I have the impression you were using the blue cards.
Yeah, me too. I'm sure someone said something about blue cards.
Whatever. In the end, one card of the wrong colour got into the mix, which means there was cheating.
Yes, cards slipped into the deck would seem to indicate cheating. Yet, this card raises two serious questions. Apollo? Yes? Let's consider the first question, shall we? Think, in the last game, when was the card swapped? When? There are three more possibilities here. It could have been swapped before the murder, during the murder, or after the murder.
Well, yeah. Thanks for the news bulletin, Mr. Wright. Of course it was
Oh. It might be as simple as you think, Mr. Payne, or it might not be. I'd like to hear what Apollo thinks first. When do you think the cards were swapped? When was the card swapped into the deck? Perhaps it happened after the murder?
What's that? Ridiculous. What's the point of cheating after the hands have been shown? That's silly.
Yes, but tell me, how do you swap cards during the game? I'll take silly over impossible.
Take it from me, son. There's a lot of silly in this world. Very little impossible.
Even when the backs of the cards are a different colour. If you pulled that during the game, you'd be caught in no time.
Well,
Quite true. That would mean that the blue card in question was swapped after the hands were shown, after the murder.
Okay. This is going past silly and straight on to crazy. I ask again, what's the point of cheating after the game's over? Who would do that?
Indeed. That's one of the mysteries before us.
there's another.
Yes, a simple yet decisive question must be asked. Who swapped the red card for a blue card? Who? The game of murder is done. The victim is dead. Only two remain in the room alive, that is. The defendant, Phoenix Wright, and our witness, Ogre O'Reilly. Okay, so who was it that swapped the red card for a blue? The one who swapped the cards wasn't Mr. Wright, of course. And, well, it doesn't seem like it could have been Ogre O'Reilly either.
What are you suggesting?
That's hardly a logical conclusion, I'll admit. As the defense, I think it only makes sense for you to name Miss O'Reilly at this point. Yes, I know. But she was the one who dealt the cards, right? I just can't believe she would make the mistake of swapping the wrong colour card.
And if the cards were swapped during the game, it would be obvious. Something you'd like to share with the court, Mr. Wright?
Oh, my apologies, Your Honour. I was just thinking how much fun all this is.
Fun? How about confusing? I've no idea what the defense is claiming, Your Honour. If the one who swapped the card wasn't the defendant, and it wasn't Miss O'Reilly, then who was it?
Yeah, well, that is the question, isn't it? Precisely. Huh? I believe we're about to see this case take a new direction.
A new direction?
We'll find that, indeed, after the murder, someone swapped one of the cards in the victim's hand. And that someone made two critical mistakes. I'm sure you're going to tell us that the first was swapping the wrong colour card. Because the one who did the swap didn't know that two colours of cards were being used. The other mistake was the number on the card. Right, person replaced the 5th ace with a king. I'm sure whoever swapped it wasn't expecting there to be a 5th ace after all. All they knew was that the game had been won with a full house. So they picked up a king from the table and swapped it in.
But there's one problem. According to our case record, this person doesn't exist.
True, not until now. But you have to admit a possibility of a 4th person. No, it's more than a possibility. There was someone else there that night at the scene of the crime.
What?
I believe the judge spoke truthfully earlier. You do make trials ridiculous, Mr. Wright.
This trial has proceeded on one central assumption, namely that at the time of the incident there were only 3 people in that room.
I believe this new evidence, shall we say, overturns that assumption.
The problem is that you chose to conceal this information from the court.
I suppose that is a problem, yes.
Court is adjourned for a brief recess. Mr. Gavin, I'll see you in my chambers during this recess.
Certainly, Your Honor.
Very well. The trial will resume in 20 minutes.
That was quite unexpected, Mr. Wright. To suddenly claim there was another person at the scene of the crime like that. I must ask, is it the truth? Oh no. I think you would know the answer to that. Being mysterious, are we? Sadly, I have no time for mysteries. I would only ask you that you leave the defending to your defense in the future. Otherwise, I cannot guarantee the outcome. I see you haven't mellowed out one bit, Christoph. Justice?
Yes, sir.
The judge has summoned me to his chambers, so carry on without me. You did well, Apollo. Can I ask you something? Sure. That locket you wear, is that really yours, Mr. Wright? Ah, you're wondering about the victim's disappearing locket. Yeah, you can take a look at it. It's a picture of my daughter in there. I'm just surprised to hear you had a daughter. Most people are. She'll be there one of these days. One more question. The one who cheated that night, was it you? What do you think? Huh? You know what happened 7 years ago, what I did. It's not unreasonable for you to think I might cheat. I'm never honest. But it is odd that you managed to go undefeated for 7 whole years. Want to know something? There's only one game where you can be dealt bad cards all night and still win. Poker. Huh? You see, poker is all about reading your opponent. In that way, it's a lot like a court case. Poker is like trial law. Figure out what your opponent is thinking, and you win. Well, yeah, but that's harder than it sounds. I think not. Try as they might to conceal it, everyone reveals their true thoughts in the end. Their body language can become a valuable source of information. You're kidding. That witness, for instance, Miss O'Reilly. She would touch the back of her neck during certain parts of her testimony. Did you notice? No. Come on, who noticed that? Words, habits, twitches. It's all information for the reading. That's the secret to winning, Apollo. Someone taught me, and then I passed the secret on to you. But I'm not worthy. I mean, there's no way I'll pick up on these signals. No, you can do it. Huh? You just don't know it yet. What's he talking about? But you will, soon. Almost forgot. One more thing, about this case. You should know, I haven't told the truth to anyone yet. What? I knew it. I have my reasons, of course. All shall be revealed. And Apollo, I need you to be there defending me. I need your power. My, power? I had no idea my quarters still were that special. It's time. The real trial begins now. Do your best.
Court will now reconvene. Has our witness, Miss Olga, really recovered?
Yes, Your Honor. Well, she's regained consciousness.
Perhaps we can hear her version of the events again.
That's the thing. You see, she's quite fatigued.
You're looking a bit fatigued yourself, Mr. Payne.
Sadly, fatigue is insufficient grounds for refusing to testify or prosecute. The defense would like to request that Miss O'Reilly take the stand.
Very well. A witness will take the stand.
Perhaps you could repeat your name and profession. Or perhaps you'd rather admit that you're a poor liar and a poor loser.
Not. Name's Olga O'Reilly. That's the truth. I'm a pro dealer. People call me Olga Quickfingers O'Reilly.
Oh, really?
Want to know something else? I'm not really Russian, and my last name sounds like O'Reilly. There, that's the truth. I hope you're satisfied.
Witness, you will tell the court what you were really up to that night.
Fine, I'll talk. We had a plan, see?
Let me remind you that you are currently under oath. Any further fabrications will have serious consequences.
Fine. Like I said, I'm a pro. That guy Smith hired me to do what I do best. I was planted at the Borscht Bowl Club several days prior to the night of the game. As a waitress.
So, you were in cahoots with the victim?
Not that he needed my help. Smith is a well-known poker player in some circles. But winning wasn't the main purpose of this game. I was about destroying the legend, the unbeatable Phoenix Wright. Plan was simple, elegant really. You see, we set up a trap of sorts. Just to plant a card in Wright's pocket beforehand. And then deal 5 aces during one of their games. When their hands were revealed, Smith would call him out and search Wright. He would then pull out the planted card, and the trap would snap shut.
You swapped the cards.
Exposed as a cheater, and losing on top of it, it would have made a great double play. Just like that, the legend would be dashed to pieces.
Indeed. Getting caught red-handed cheating would cast doubt on all his prior wins.
The 7-year legend destroyed by one little card. That was the plan.
Oh really, how droll. But It appears you made quite the mistake.
A mistake?
I agree the trap was elegant. Yet, what happened to that planted card? Hey, that's right.
He's lucky I'll give him that. You'd have to be to slip free from a trap laid by Olga Quickfingers, really.
Oh, really? The witness would be much cuter if she dispensed with the evil mastermind shtick.
Cute. Who wants to be cute? I'm not cute. I'm bad, you hear me? Bad.
When you're through being bad, perhaps you could testify to the court. Tell us about this trap and how it was sprung.
That night, I planted the cloud like I was supposed to. And Wright lost the last hand, just like he was supposed to. Then Smith searched him. But the planted card was gone. The trap failed. The next moment, Wright picked up a bottle and swung it. It wasn't me who hit Smith. It was that no-good cheating defendant.
A surprisingly frank testimony that still leaves us mostly in the dark.
The trap was perfect, I tell you. Perfect. If that rotten cheater hadn't messed it up.
Look who's talking.
Well, the testimony for what it's worth is all yours, Mr. Justice.
With witnesses like her, who needs criminals? With defendants like Mr. Wright, who needs prosecutors? What is that? Ew. That's it, eh? Ugh. Mhm. Let's plot the card. Which card was it exactly?
The trump card. The fifth of hearts.
Let me guess. Mr. Wright was to have switched the fifth with the ace to make a full house. At least, that's what you were going to accuse him of doing, thereby ruining his legend.
I slid it into Wright's pocket.
When was this?
Why, before the match, of course. While he was eating. At the Borscht Bowl Club. We serve borscht and suckers.
Remind me never to go there.
Of course, the card was to make its grand debut during the game. Like a good borscht. A good plot must be cooked up early and allowed to thicken.
So, everything went according to plan.
Exactly. The fifth ace came up, so it's obvious the switch went off without a hitch. Once the extra card was found in his pocket, Wright would be forever known as a cheat and a fraud.
Not worse things to be known as, I suppose.
Tell us what happened with the search. The card disappeared?
Yeah, my trump card. The fifth of hearts. Gone, without a trace. Poof, zippo. He searched every nook and cranny, even inside his cute little hat.
The card was nowhere to be found, is this correct?
Never in my long storied career. Never has Quickfingers really been so readily duped.
Really? So what did happen to that fifth of hearts?
Don't look at me. I don't ask that cheating, lying, two-faced defendant.
So the fifth of hearts is still missing in action. Oh, wait, isn't that a little odd?
What's odd?
You searched Mr. Wright's thoroughly and found nothing. Which means he didn't cheat. Which means he had no reason to strike the victim. Well... What was that just now? I sense something.
Something wrong, Mr. Justice?
No, nothing, Your Honour. What to do? Should I press her a little harder? Miss O'Reilly, you're hiding something. What are you talking about? You... Me? Quick Fingers O'Reilly hide something?
The defense will refrain from baseless accusations.
I have one question for the witness then. You say you saw the moment the defendant hit the victim. Is this true? Of course it's true. I did see it. Honest. I saw it when Mr. Wright hit him. With my own eyes, I saw it. What's this weird vibe I'm getting? That witness, for instance, Miss O'Reilly, she would touch the back of her neck during certain parts of her testimony. Did you notice? Touching her neck, was it? What's going on? This sensation. It's coming into focus. There. That twitch. It's so clear. It's like I could perceive her habit like I couldn't before.
Gotcha!
Miss O'Reilly, perhaps you are unaware of this yourself. Unaware of what? Whenever you get to a certain part of your testimony, you touch the back of your neck with your left hand. My neck? So what? What indeed, Justice? I hadn't noticed anything of the sort. When she says that part of the testimony, she's subconsciously recalling something. Her body reacts to the memory and she touches her neck. I'm sure of it.
Memory? Would someone care to explain what he's babbling about?
This is highly unusual, but let's ask the defense. You claim the witness is remembering something. Maybe you have evidence of this memory to show us.
A habit is scratching her neck whenever she talks about the moment of the crime. So what would remind her most of the moment of the crime? Miss O'Reilly, whenever you recall the crime that night, you scratch your neck. I've noticed it happens when you think about the moment of the crime. There must be some reason behind this habit of yours. I believe the weapon that left an inerasable impression on your neck is this. Whenever she talks about the moment of the crime, she touches her neck. And what reminds us more of the moment than this bottle, the murder weapon? But something doesn't fit. If you were only the witness to the crime, why would that make you touch your neck like you're in pain?
What's he talking about now?
It was Mr. Smith, the victim, who was hit. Not you.
This is a cross-examination, not a cross-wild conjecture. The witness's habits, they're completely irrelevant.
Justice, I'll admit I'm a bit confused myself. This is certainly a unique cross-examination. I'll explain later. Just trust me. Now's our only chance to break her. Miss O'Reilly, please testify in detail about the moment of the crime. The very moment.
Yet, I am doing nothing.
We know you're not Russian.
The witness will testify. Please, Now.
Fine. He's the one who did it. I didn't let him out of my sight until the cops got there.
Hold it!
You seem uneasy.
You try sitting up here.
Eyes are darting all over the place. I must be getting warm. Tell me, after the crime, what was the defendant like?
Well, he must have been stunned by the widow's crime. He sat in a daze at that table until the cops came.
Intriguing. I believe you've gotten all the testimony you're going to get out of this witness. So what do you think about her testimony? I'll tell you what I think. Her testimony is... it's basically bogus. Contradicts the evidence.
What's that?
Well, what's this evidence, Mr. Justice? This evidence that you claim contradicts the testimony.
She didn't let him out of her sight until the cops got there. I know there's some evidence that contradicts that.
Take that!
Miss O'Reilly, we have a record here that clearly contradicts what you said. It states that the police were alerted by a report from the defendant. And we know that the defendant left the room, climbed the stairs, and made that phone call from the first floor of the Borscht Bowl Club. So, explain how you kept your eyes on the defendant when he left the room entirely.
The man who picked up the bottle and swung it that night wasn't the defendant.
Showdown time. You dirty cheat. Check his pockets now.
It's gone. The card's gone.
You lose.
Ugh. Just then, Smith grabbed the bottle from next to right. And he hit me.
Some master of cheating you turned out to be.
When I came to,
The victim was already dead. Is that it?
that's why I couldn't reveal who I really was. If it came out that I was in league with Smith, I'd be a suspect for sure.
Well, where does this leave us?
Madness. This is madness. I'm dreaming. It must have been me who was hit with a bottle, and I'm imagining all this.
It appears our prosecution is at his wit's end, and frankly, I can't blame him. Mr. Gavin, what do you think about this turn of events?
Mr. Gavin, sir? I believe that, as the defence in this case, we are compelled to call Miss O'Reilly, a big fat liar.
What?
We were in that room the night of the murder, the defendant, victim and her. And she has a motive. Motive? Her plot foiled, the witness got into an argument with her client, Mr. Smith. Ugh. Don't fucking use autotext game.
What? I didn't. I'm no killer. It's a trap. Someone's trying to frame me.
What tangled webs we weave when we practice to deceive. So dang good we catch ourselves in the process.
Mr. White?
Such a hasty conclusion. It's not like you, Christoph Gavin. What are you saying? Why not consider the other possibility? There was another person in the room at the time of the murder. Right, like Mr. Rowe was saying before recess. A single card was swapped into the victim's hand after the murder. And the one who swapped the cards didn't know 2 colours of cards were being used. The 4th person.
This theory again. Your 4th person doesn't exist.
Indeed. That's why I decided to bring this case to court. Here, where there's no escape and no chance for deception. The perfect place to catch the real criminal.
Real criminal?
We're in luck. A clue to the real criminal's identity was kindly provided for us. And right at the beginning of the trial, no less.
What?
Apollo, perhaps you know what I'm talking about. Sorry. Remember what I said. The 4th person who swapped the cards made one critical error. He or she wasn't considering the colour on the backs of the cards. Right. But how could such an obvious mistake occur? The cards used for the last game were red. Yet, there is one person here in our court who thought those cards were blue. Yeah, I had that impression too, but why? Well, Apollo, think you can figure out who it was?
It's not me, I swear.
Who is this 4th person?
Why do I always get put on the spot like this? Let's see what the defense has to say. Who was it? Who thought the cards used in the final game were blue?
Take that!
As I expected. Your eyes and ears are as sharp as your hair. I was right. Christoph Gavin, you were the 4th person that night. But of course Mr. Gavin knows the colour of the cards. How would he? As you can see, the photo of the crime scene is black and white. You can't tell which of the cards are blue. The ones on the floor or the table. But look! You can see the colour in this photo. Yes, but when he said the cards were blue, it was well before this evidence came to light. It is true that the defendant was engaged in a game of poker with the victim. Yet it was only that, a game in the purest sense, a competition, Your Honour.
Competition?
Yes, a test of wits, silent clash of passions. Only the cards, their backs wreathed in blue flame, knew its final outcome. Well, Christoph? Mr. Gavin?
Mr. Gavin, is something the matter?
No, nothing. Excuse me, it was just so sudden. Right. You aren't seriously accusing me, are you? Oh, Christoph. You know even I'd never take a joke this far.
This has gone beyond ridiculous, beyond dumb. This is insanity. The defendant accusing his own defense attorney of murder?
I assure you, I'm quite sane.
But what possible connection could Mr. Gavin have to the victim?
I wasn't aware that I had a connection to Mr. Smith either.
Yes, but Mr. Gavin and the victim have never even met.
Well, what if they have? Huh? There is a possibility, after all. They may have met that night, before the game started.
What are you suggesting?
Is this the truth Mr. Wright was staying silent about? Well, only one thing to do. Mr. Wright, the defense would like to request that you... The defense would like to request no such thing. Mr. Gavin? Testimonies must relate to the case. How could anything happening before that game of poker be related?
I'm not sure I follow, Mr. Gavin.
As I explained before, the defense believes that Miss O'Reilly...
Am I to assume you speak for Mr. Justice in this? He is the defense, not you. Mr. Justice, the matter of Mr. Wright's testimony is up to you.
Oh, okay.
Does the court, in your opinion, need to hear Mr. Wright's testimony?
This was Mr. Wright's strategy. He was planning this all along. I intend to see it through. The defense would like to request that Mr. Wright testify to the court. pt1, Justice. You would betray me, your teacher. Sorry, Mr. Gavin. This isn't about loyalty. This is about the truth.
Very well. The defendant, Mr. Wright, will take the stand, please.
That evening, Christoph and I had dinner. We sat at the table in this photograph. Shady Smith walked in 5 minutes after Christoph left. When the trap failed, Smith hit the waitress. The girl was knocked out cold and Smith was uncontrollable. I left to call the police. When I returned, he was dead, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. That's when I made another phone call. The defense attorney Gavin.
Mr. Gavin, you were at the Borscht Ball Club the night of the murder.
I dine with him rather frequently.
And he talked to the defendant on the phone directly after the murder?
Quite against my will, I had become involved in a murder. I thought I might be in need of a lawyer, so I called him. You were planning this all along, weren't you, Wright? Just because you wanted to drag me into your little murder trial. The only thing I want is the truth. As I did back then, now. I thought my office was doing you a favour when we took on your defence. It appears that I was wrong.
Very well. The defence may cross-examine the witness.
Justice? Sir? He's lying, and you're going to expose him. Understood, sir? Mr. Gavin must, Mr. Wright. This can't end well. Why can't I have a normal trial?
Hold it!
You had dinner with Mr. Gavin? Yes, he dines with me at the Borscht Ball Club quite frequently. We're enjoying the usual dinner at our usual spot, as usual. I always eat at the table closest to the piano.
I see. Where Mr. Smith was sitting.
So, the plates and such on the table were from your dinner?
Indeed, the remnants of my meal with Christoph. We dined for 2 hours, then Christoph left. After that,
Hold it!
5 minutes. So the two of them could have passed in the restaurant during that time. And that would have been a fateful encounter, to be sure.
Oh, Mr. Wright. What was it you said? Christoph Gavin and Shady Smith may have met.
I believe I did say that.
Here I was all nervous about this meeting. And now we hear they just passed in the hall.
Does seem a little weak as a pretense for murder.
Well, it would be, if that was all that really happened. Mr. White. What are you hiding this time? Not this failed trap. Is this the same trap that Miss Olga really mentioned?
The plan was simple, elegant really. You see, we set up a trap of sorts. I was to plant a card in Mr. Wright's pocket beforehand, and then deal 5 aces during one of their games. When the hands were revealed, Smith would call him out and search Wright. He would then pull out the planted card and the trap would snap shut.
You swapped the cards.
Just like that, the legend would be dashed to pieces.
Yes, a harmless prank in essence. It was by a quirk of fate that I happened to discover it.
A quirk?
I happened to put my hand in my pocket and found a card. And the card she planted? Yes, I snuck a peek at it and found it was the 5 of Hearts. I had a feeling something might happen, so I disposed of the card before the game.
Disposed? Where?
It was an empty bottle of grape juice I had been drinking right beside me. I threw the card inside the bottle.
An empty bottle of grape juice.
The murder weapon! Yes, I rolled it up and shoved it in. The coloured glass makes it hard to see.
A battle of wits between the deceiver and the would-be deceived. That sounds like terrific drama.
Card inside the murder weapon. That's strange. Did the police miss it in their investigation? Maybe I'll take a look.
Mr. Wright, the poker-head of courtroom number 3 approves of this battle of wits. Please revise your testimony with this new information.
It's completely empty. I discovered the trap during the game and disposed of the card in the bottle. Why in the bottle? I perceived my opponent's intent immediately. I am used to entrapment, you see. I knew what was coming.
So you're struck first. Why, like that.
I know every trick in the book. They don't work on me. At least, when you get lucky and stick your hand in your pocket, they don't. You made the call to the police from the first floor of the restaurant, correct? Exactly. Cell phones don't get a signal down in the hideout. Was anyone else on the first floor at that time? Not a soul. It was the middle of the night after all. So there in the darkened restaurant I called the cops. After making the call I returned to the hideout. It didn't seem right to leave the injured waitress alone. And when you returned the victim was already... dead, yes. I'll admit, I was a little startled when I walked in.
Little?
He was bleeding from his forehead after all. Guess I'd be startled too if I walked in on the scene like that. Could you explain why you called Mr. Gavin? I've obviously gotten involved in a rather sticky affair. I figured Christoph's law office would give me a friend rate my defense fees. Glad to hear you intend to pay. Oh, I'll pay in full, Christoph. It was I who got you involved, after all. You may find the price of your defense quite high, my good friend. Quite high.
Is this the truth Mr. White was talking about?
Justice, you know what you have to do. He's lying. Expose him now.
Yes, sir. I have to think, what's Mr. White trying to tell me with his testimony? The truth has to be in there, somewhere. Mr. Wright, if I may.
Yes?
I've examined the bottle and I don't see any card in here.
No?
What? Mr. Wright, surely isn't all you have to say for yourself?
Say that I know what happened to the card. I did put it in that bottle, however... Huh? Perhaps a fifth person came and took it out. Oh, and a sixth person could have helped.
Mr. Gavin, Mr. Wright is your client.
My apologies, Your Honour.
I won't have you disparaging our investigation either. We looked inside that bottle. There was nothing.
So what's going on? Is Mr. Wright hoodwinking us again? Or did the card just disappear?
In any case, please continue the cross-examination. I'm afraid decisive contradictions call for decisive evidence.
Oh. Push him harder, Justice. Break him. It's just you and the witness in the ring. Go for the KO.
Why do I get the feeling we're not on our client's side anymore? Mr. Wright, if I may...
Yes?
Take a look at this photograph of the crime scene. See the victim here? He's wearing a hat. I wouldn't think you could see blood on his forehead.
Good point. Justice. Next time you point out an inconsistency, put a little more oomph into it.
Mr. Wright, can you explain this to the court?
I forgot to mention something. Who was the one who put that hat on his head?
You?
You put the hat on the dead man's head?
He wore it through our entire poker game. After calling the police when I returned to the scene, his head was in full view. Shining bright, just like this photograph, like in this photograph.
And
I picked his head up off the floor and put it on his head.
Why'd you do a thing like that?
All I can say is, I'm sorry. That's the only thing I touched at the crime scene.
So, Miss O really didn't see it? It being the victim's, his head?
I think not. She was out cold. I believe I was the only one who witnessed his head. Here we go again.
Mr. Gavin?
Pardon. It just seems that our client is determined to lie his way through this case.
Hey, he's still our client, isn't he?
I believe that's enough of that.
Mr. Gavin?
This witness's testimony is more like a travesty. It's riddled with lies. I'm beginning to see how you came to lose your attorney's badge 7 years ago. Well,
You certainly have a unique way of treating your clients, Christoph. I never knew.
I believe it was you who threw the first stone.
Mr. Wright, if you intend to ever tell the truth about this case, it's now or never.
Don't be misled. I haven't told a single lie here. Huh? When I noticed the trap, I put the card in the bottle to dispose of it. And when I put the hat on the victim's head, let's just say I had a reason for doing that as well.
A reason?
That reason is right here.
Your cell phone?
That night, recall that I spoke with Defense Attorney Gavin after calling the police. Just in case, I recorded our conversation. What's this? Now that we're all here, I see no reason why I shouldn't play it back for the court. Christoph, I seem to be in a bit of trouble. What's this? Game not going well? Something like that. That gentleman who challenged you, he turned out to be any good? To be good? There. Turned out to be dead. Someone hit him, hard. You mean someone cracked that flawless bone china plate? It wasn't you, was it? Me? Please. The cop should be here any minute. I'm in your hands, should it come to that. Bone china plate? Kind of porcelain, very smooth and shiny, but not plate, but pate. I believe he was referring to a certain gentleman's balding forehead.
The court appreciates the defendant's discretion in not indicating my forehead.
Wait a second. Something that's not right about that phone call. So, after Mr. Gavin ate dinner with you, he left the Borscht Bowl Club? Most certainly. Then how did he know? When did he see this bone china plate?
Oh, that's right.
Yes. That was when I began to see my good friend in a different light. Troubled, I returned to the crime scene. When I spotted Mr. Smooth's head again, I realised exactly what was wrong. Well, Mr. Gavin, the stage has been set. Perhaps you would like to explain this to the court. Exactly how did you come by your privileged knowledge of the victim's head? So, this is your reason. The reason why you put the victim's hat back on. Your point, Mr. Gavin? It's come down to this, has it, Phoenix Wright?
Order! I will have order! Mr. Payne!
Yes, Your Honour.
I believe this court has been left with no other choice. Are you prepared to hear Defense Attorney Gavin's testimony?
Well, as a prosecutor, I...
Very well. We'll break for 10 minutes. After which Mr. Gavin will take the stand for a cross-examination. Are we all clear on that?
Crystal clear, Your Honour.
Very well. This will be the final recess for the day.
Mr. Gavin and Mr. Wright are both in the judge's chamber. I would have thought a day would turn out like this.
May I?
Huh? What?
Hello, sir. Please pick a card.
What's all this about? Is this one okay?
Excellent. I have a message for you. The last hand is about to be played. You'll need a trump card to make it.
Trump card?
The card you have chosen is magical. Use it wisely, and the game is yours. That's all.
Nice. Where do I remember that card from?
Mr. Smith's hand has 3 aces, and Mr. Wright's 2. It is 5 aces in all. It is true. I've seen it. The 5th ace. And there was cheating. I swear to you.
The missing 5th ace. Oh, wait, this blotch of red. Is this blood?
You have your trump card. Now it's up to you to cut the deck and draw the truth. My father's fate is in your hands. I know you can do it.
This blood-stained card is my trump card for finding the truth? I fell deep into thought as my mind raced to understand what this all meant. That girl, I'd seen her recently, but where? That's when I made the connection.
Court will now reconvene. Defense Attorney Christoph Gavin, will you please take the stand? Now then, if you would, Mr. Payne.
Yes, Your Honor. Will Mr. The witness state his name and occupation?
Is this farce necessary, Your Honor?
Believe me, far stranger things have gone on in this courtroom.
Fine, I'll play along.
First, there's one thing we need to have made clear. How did you know about the secret beneath the victim's hat?
The secret, I'm guessing, means the fact that Mr. Smith was bald. Forgive my curiosity, but what is it about this fellow's head? Your Honor seems to have an inordinate interest in it. I wouldn't call it inordinate, Mr. Gavin.
Mr. Wright?
What do you think you're doing, right?
Oh, I'm sure it's different from the other side. You know what I mean, Apollo?
Speaking of, looking from the other side, let's consider something for a second. The victim wore that hat all night, never once taking it off, except for that one time. And that one time being the instant he was hit?
Oh,
When Mr. Wright returned from reporting the crime, the hat was lying on the floor. Mr. Wright picked it up and placed it on the victim's head. In other words, in order to have seen Mr. Smith's bald head, you would have had to be at the scene of the crime, at the time of the crime. In other words, you'd have to be the real killer, is what you're trying to say. Not bad, Apollo.
Mr. Gavin?
I'm afraid that I haven't been entirely honest with the court.
What?
Oh, I assure you, I have the noblest of intentions. I did it all to protect my client, Mr. Wright. Yet, I'm afraid in the current situation I see little reason to hide anything. Very well, allow me to tell you the truth of what happened that night. Good Lord, it got dark today.
Finally, you may begin your testimony. Tell us, how were you involved in the events of that fateful night?
The rage I sensed in that man that night troubled me, so I returned to the club. I went down to the basement and peeked in through the little window to the hideout. It must have been right after the murder took place. The victim was dead, as he appears in the photo. A bald head, an unconscious girl, and Wright holding a bottle in his hand. I sensed this was not the best place for me to be at the time, and so I left. That's when the call came from Wright.
So, you witnessed the murder?
Or better or worse, I missed the actual moment of the deed.
Mr. Gavin, may I remind you that you're on Mr. Wright's defense team? Your testimony is clearly disadvantageous to your client.
What else could I say? I'm standing on the witness stand after all. So you are Mr. Gavin. And you had to testify as you just did. You had to tell them what you had to tell them you saw the scene of the crime through that little window. Mr. Wright? You had to say that. Because that was the only probable window of opportunity. Right, Apollo? Oh.
Mr. Wright, the defense should do the cross-examination, not the defendant. Mr. Justice, are you prepared?
Yes, Your Honor. Can't believe I'm going up against Mr. Gavin. This trial is getting weirder and weirder. That man, you mean Mr. Smith? He was different from the other customs. His aura, shall we say. I knew he was a serious poker player, but it was more than that.
So then you knew the true nature of your client's job?
Of course. But I also knew he wasn't engaged in gambling, which would be illegal. Well, it makes sense that he'd know. They were friends after all. Worried for my friend, I returned to the club. You see, I feared this Mr. Smith might be someone coming to settle an old score.
I see. What happened then?
The little window? You mean the one used to keep watch up the stairs? Yes. A relic of the ancient past. The Black Marketeers used it, I believe. Why did you go through the trouble of peeking in through the window? Wouldn't it be easier to just open the door and go into the room? I didn't want to upset Wright, you see. Upset Mr. Wright? Yes. What if my fears had been unfounded? I'd be walking in on their match. Bad form, to say the least. So far, everything you're saying makes sense. How do you know it was right after the murder? Really, no need to shout, Justice. I was just getting to that part in my testimony. Oh, there he is. The coolest defense attorney in the West, you know and love. Even when you're standing up there on the witness stand, some things never change. I was afraid you'd change too, Wright, but you haven't. You and that overbearing personality of yours. It's like these who needs enemies. By photo, you mean the second photograph of the crime scene? Precisely. You see, he wasn't wearing his hat then. I saw his head, and he was dead. And then Mr. Wright came along and replaced his hat.
Can you describe the scene of the crime for us?
Those were the only three at the scene of the crime? Yes. As far as I saw, at least.
And then we're back where we started. The killer was the defendant, Phoenix Wright. Who else could it have been? But why didn't you talk to the police?
2 reasons. First, I didn't actually witness the very moment of the crime. Second, my office was asked to defend Wright. Even after seeing what I had seen, I couldn't abandon my friend. There must have been someone else there at the moment of the crime. Justice, I just said I saw no one, not a soul. That goes against what Mr. Wright said. Ah yes, this mysterious fourth person. Who would conveniently be the real killer, I suppose. Glad to see we agree, Mr. Gavin. Let me pose a question then. Tell me, what possible reason did the real killer have to swap the cards in the victim's hand? Perhaps you can show us a reason why such a thing would be necessary. Could I show something I can't find myself? Remember, Apollo, the card that was swapped out was the fifth ace. The fifth ace. Right.
Well, Mr. Justice, the question of why the killer would swap out a card has been raised. Can you point to a reason?
It's now or never. The defense would like to present evidence to the court. Evidence showing the reason why a card was swapped out.
Then go ahead and point out your reason, Mr. Justice. Why did the killer take the fifth ace?
My reason is, this.
Is that an ace?
Why, it's got blood on it! Right next to the spade!
What?
This is insane. Why wasn't I told about this? Why?
Could this be... Could this be the missing fifth ace?
Inconceivable. How could you... What are you doing with that card?
Well, that's the thing. Is Mr. Gavin so upset? It's just a fishy card from some fishy girl.
Well, that card. It's mine. And that is, I picked it up at the Borscht Bowl Club that night after the murder had occurred. I gave it to my daughter. Cards are a stock and trade after all. No. Impossible. Unacceptable. Court can't accept this evidence. It's a fraud. A fraud? How can you be so sure? What? I would think, for one, I would think the only person who could claim it was a fraud would be the one who took the real card from the crime scene, the real killer. Allow me to elaborate. What if this trace of blood was the reason?
The reason for...
For the killer to take the card from the scene of the crime.
Where are you going with this?
Take another look at the photo, and at the victim's head. At the moment of the crime, his hat fell to the floor, and a trickle of blood ran from his forehead and down the back of his head. Couldn't a drop of that blood have fallen on one of the cards? I suppose. The killer then took the card to hide the blood. Regardless, that evidence is non-permissible. Oh? Right. Regardless of how you wasted the last 7 years, you used to be a lawyer. You know what a serious crime it is to conceal evidence. Well, we can discuss the finer points of our legal system later. What's important now is that I've answered your question. What are you talking about? I wanted to know why the killer would have taken a card from the crime scene. And now, I've told you. That one drop of blood would have been decisive evidence, you see. And this is baseless conjecture. Baseless. Oh, I assure you it's quite based. What? It's amazing, really, how a single drop of blood on a single card can lead us to the truth. It's quite simple. Well, Apollo? Yes? Try picturing the scene of the crime. Try picturing the scene of the crime in your head. murder took place in the hideout. The body of the luckless victim was found at the poker table, and before the killer swapped a card out, there was a single card with a drop of blood on it in the victim's hand. Given this, there is one decisive problem with this scene.
Well, what is it?
Let's keep it all simple, shall we? Given that there was a drop of blood on the card, whose position in this diagram doesn't fit? The victims, the killers, the witnesses, the second witnesses. Whose position doesn't fit with the bloody card? Well, isn't it the victim's position that's the problem?
I don't follow your logic here, Mr. Justice.
Well, look, the victim was struck on the head, sending him back in his chair. Do you think any blood would fall behind the body, not onto the table in front of him?
Oh,
You can look at the photo again. If he bled in this position, the blood would fall onto the floor, not on the cards.
why, that's right. So, what does this mean?
Incidentally, we were sitting in swivel chairs. Swivel chairs? Oh man. Hold on, try turning the chair around.
The chair was facing the other way?
Would have to be. So, we have to assume that at the time of the murder, the victim's chair was facing away from the table?
When Mr. White returned from informing the police, which way was the chair facing?
When I came back to the room, the body was facing as seen in this photo. And that would mean the killer turned the chair back around? Let's take the next step. Look at the diagram once more. We know now the victim was facing away from the table at the time of the murder. But this creates another significant contradiction.
Again?
Let's test your reasoning skills again, shall we? Apollo, whose location on this diagram contradicts our new understanding of the crime? The victims, the killer, the witness, the second witnesses. Whose location creates a contradiction if the victim was facing away? The victim was struck from the front, correct? Indeed. Well, wouldn't it be hard for the killer to hit him from the front? Sitting with his where his indicator currently is? I would think that it would be quite hard, yes.
Yes, but what you're saying makes no sense. Why would the victim suddenly turn to face the wall in the middle of a game?
I believe a sufficient reason will soon come to light.
What?
There's something in this diagram that makes far less sense, actually. Look again at the diagram. Apollo, if the victim was struck while he was sitting as shown here, where would his assailant be standing? Try marking it on the diagram. Huh? But no room to put a mark where the killer should be. Don't worry, let's think it through and see what we find. We know the victim was facing toward the wall at the time of the crime. There's only one thing we know for sure. Try to forget about everything else. That's the only thing we know for sure. Try to forget about everything else. Where would the killer have to be standing to strike our victim from the front? The killer had to be standing, well, here?
You get points for flair, but that's about all you get.
I thought I was onto something there too.
I hardly need to point out that standing there would be impossible. The victim is facing a solid cupboard. Or are you claiming that the killer climbed the cupboard and hit him from above?
It's simple logic, really. If this was the only place the killer could have been standing, And that means that at the very moment of the crime... Oh, wait, I know. At the moment of the crime, the cupboard wasn't there.
What's this now?
I mean, that's the only explanation, right, Mr. Gavin? Your Honour, I have a suggestion for the defence. We should arrange to examine the cupboard in the hideout immediately.
Bailiff, send a team to the crime scene immediately. Have them try to move the cupboard.
Your Honour.
What?
There's one more thing you'll mention to court. Please give this to the bailiff.
Yes, I see. You do belong in the courtroom after all, Mr. Wright.
I do my best. But let's forge ahead here while we wait. Look at this diagram once again. It's been changed. If the killer was standing here at the time of the crime, then this cupboard wasn't there, which means... Apollo, try moving the cupboard. Thank you. As you can see, the cupboard was the problem. At the time of the murder, it has to have been as shown here. Now everything is in place to reconstruct the moment of the crime. Oh my. What's this?
What is it now?
Look at the diagram of the crime scene once more. It appears we found yet another contradiction. What I believe to be the final contradiction, in fact. Oh, dang. Notice something, Apollo? Our line of deduction is rapidly approaching its logical conclusion.
Now then, Mr. Justice, please point to this new contradicting indicator. Is it the victim, the killer, the witness, the second witness? Which indicator in this diagram contradicts what we know about the crime?
About this cupboard. Are we all okay with assuming it was moved? Sure, why not? Well, if it was, something really doesn't fit. The cupboard would completely cover up the window to the stairs.
Ah,
And that's right, someone standing outside wouldn't be able to see in. Someone like Mr. Gavin.
what? What did you say?
Is the coolest defense in the West losing its cool?
Don't expect me to play along with your little game, right?
It's only a game until someone gets killed, Mr. Gavin. And someone was. Well, the window to that room was blocked by a cupboard. So, Mr. Gavin, perhaps you'd like to explain to the court exactly where did you witness the crime scene from? Excuse me, Your Honour.
Order! This is a court of law and I will have order.
We just now received word from our investigative team at the Borscht Bowl Club. They've examined the cupboard in the hideout, Your Honour.
Oh, what did they find?
Oh, Your Honour, it turns out there is a secret passage behind it.
What?
Oh yes, I believe I mentioned something of the sort before. And this is one of the tricks to the room many of our regulars know about. I remember saying something about that now that he mentions it. Secret passages are a handy thing to have when you're engaged in illegal goings-on. You never know when you might need to duck away from the eyes of the law. So, the room is a secret passage. Where does it go? The other side connects to the restaurant above. The underworld bosses could get away from the cops and enjoy a cold bowl of borscht, no doubt. Just like our killer. You see where our line of simple deductive reasoning has led us, Apollo? I see it, but I don't believe it. That girl wasn't kidding when she said I needed this trump card for the last hand. At the time of the murder, the window was blocked, and the victim's hat was only off of his head for the few minutes between Mr. Smith's murder and Mr. Wright's return from calling the cops. In other words, the only place anyone could have seen the victim's bald head was from inside the hideout. Well, Mr. Gavin, come on, say something.
Dare I ask what really happened that night?
Actually, I think we can probably figure it out ourselves at this point. That night, for whatever reason, our killer had a date with Mr. Smith. A date with destiny. There he crouched, hidden in the secret passageway behind the cupboard, holding his breath, waiting for just the right moment. Then the chance came and he took it. Eek! What? Where did you do that? Wait here, I'll get help. This old garoo was out cold, struck by Mr. Smith. His time was soon to come. Mr. Wright went upstairs to call the cops, leaving Mr. Shaggy Smith alone in the hideout with the unconscious dealer. Another killer stepped out from the secret passage and into the hideout. The victim must have had the cupboard sliding aside. He rolled his chair around to look, and after the deed was done, the criminal must have seen the blood on the card. He would have, of course, realised the need to destroy the evidence. That single spot of blood told the whole story of the crime. Too bad for him he didn't linger any longer in the hideout that night. If he had, he might have noticed the cards on the floor, and the fact that they were all red.
It seems this trial has taken yet another turn. I'm truly sorry to see this day come, Mr. Gavin.
Mr. Gavin.
Mr. Payne.
Yes, Your Honor.
The prosecution will continue its investigation. As per Mr. Payne's right, the defendant, he is hereby cleared of all suspicion. Believe me when I say that I don't believe this is happening, Mr. Gavin. But I'm afraid circumstances call for me to issue a warrant for your arrest immediately.
Oh, no need to apologise. I rather enjoyed myself. It's not every day you get to witness a legendary attorney's dirty tactics firsthand. Your point, Mr. Gavin? Frankly, Your Honour, I'm shocked. Not a person of your caliber will be taken in by such a low-grade parlour trick.
Excuse me?
The defendant is cleared of all suspicion. This is hardly the time for jokes, Your Honour. Mr. Wright hasn't proven anyone's guilt or innocence here. What he has done is use illegal evidence to put the blame onto someone else. And not just anyone else, but me, his own defense attorney.
Legal evidence?
Let me ask you, Mr. Gavin. Is there still any reason at present to suspect me of wrongdoing? Of course. This bottle, for instance. Bottle of grape juice Mr. Wright was drinking? How do you intend to explain away the fingerprints on the murder weapon? And not just any fingerprints, am I right, Mr. Payne?
Actually, yes. The fingerprints on the bottle were, upside down.
I seem to recall this being an issue earlier. The court, and this case, demand an explanation. I can think of only one reason why one would hold a bottle upside down. And that is to hit someone with the bottom of the bottle. Well, Your Honour. See how the caught fish squirms to the last. Well, Apollo? Yes? Your boss seems awfully concerned about this bottle still. But I'm sure you can come up with a suitable explanation, just like that. Yeah. Just like what? Why would anyone grab a bottle upside down other than to... Don't let him trick you into thinking his explanation is the only legitimate one. Really another? Take another look at the court record. I believe you'll find a simple answer there, in plain sight. But you just say the answer in plain words.
It would be hasty to deliver a verdict with unanswered questions, indeed. Well, Mr. Justice,
It's the cabinet said that the court in this case demand an explanation. Don't worry, justice won't leave until justice is done.
perhaps the defense would care to enlighten the court. What evidence do you have to explain why the fingerprints on the bottle are upside down?
It's actually easy to show rather than explain, Your Honour. Place that bottle on the floor next to your chair.
Excuse me, on the floor?
Yes, now reach down and pick it up, without getting out of your chair. See? You naturally go to pick up the bottle by its neck, with your fingers upside down. Look at this photograph taken on the night of the murder. The defendant, Mr. Wright, sat here, playing piano, bottles of grape juice on the floor to the side of his piano bench. He would have naturally picked up the bottles upside down several times.
Wow, I can't believe it was that simple.
Recall our dinner that evening, Christoph? I was drinking my usual juice then too. Basically, you used the bottle on the table to do the deed. Then you must have remembered. You went and picked up one of the bottles from under the piano. And you switched the bottles. You took one of Mr. Wright's bottles and made it look like the murder weapon.
Order, order, order! What do you have to say to these charges, Mr. Gavin?
Fascinating. So this is the legendary attorney's famed tactic of misdirection. What? You claim that I switched the bottle. Where is your proof? Proof? Well, that's, as I thought. More baseless conjecture. I'm afraid your bottle of proof is quite empty. I wouldn't be so sure about that. Your Honour, when you initiated the investigation of the hideout earlier, did you recall I requested an additional investigation?
Yes, I have your memo about that here. Retrieve the bottles from under the piano at the Borscht Bowl Club. And here's one of the bottles in question.
What, are you going to dust? Are you going to dust that for fingerprints too? I'd be surprised if any were on that, but his. Mr. Gavin probably wouldn't make such a novice mistake true. That bottle won't bear a trace of anything. Say Apollo. Yes? Why don't you go ahead and examine that bottle? But why? Just humour me. Mr. Wright. That bottle will solve this case once and for all. What? That's some bottle. There's something inside the bottle. What's this? That card. It can't be. With all that unpleasant woman's testimony for a moment. Miss Ungura, really? Yes, I'm not swindling Devochka. That night, I planted the card like I was supposed to. And Wright lost the last hand just like he was supposed to. Then Smith searched him. But the planted card was gone. The trap failed. Wait, this isn't... You're telling me that this is the planted card you disposed of? The one you mentioned in this piece of testimony? I happened to put my hand in my pocket and found a card. Yes, I snuck a peek at it and found it was the Five of Hearts. I had a feeling something might happen, so I disposed of the card before the game.
Disposed? Where?
There was an empty bottle of grape juice I had been drinking right beside me. I threw the card inside the bottle. And the Five of Hearts. This is the card. The bottles were swapped. And the only one who could have done that was the fourth person in the club that night. You, Mr. Christoph Gavin. And that is all. Is this your idea of revenge, Phoenix Wright?
Revenge?
Revenge for the events that took away your attorney's badge 7 years ago. My past is like my logic, straight and true. Nothing's changed. All I did was point the finger of justice in the proper direction. Fine. I'm glad we could have this little tete-a-tete, right?
This is insane. What about me? Don't I get to prosecute anyone?
I believe this time we finally come to the end of our trial. Mr. Payne, do you have a report for us on Christoph Gavin?
He's admitted everything. We're processing his arrest now.
I see. Still, one has to wonder why he would do such a thing. He didn't even have a connection to the victim, did he?
None that we know of.
Mr. Wright, have you anything to add?
I'm afraid I can't shed any more light on the matter.
What about this victim, Mr. Shady Smith? His occupation was listed as traveller. An odd profession to be sure, and that's all we know about him.
I'll arrange a follow-up investigation, Your Honor.
Mr. White?
Yes?
7 years and you still haven't lost your touch.
Christoph Gavin was a man with much significance for me, both as a friend and a lawyer.
He was extremely talented, to be sure.
I needed two things before I could confront him. The first was a place where no injustice would be tolerated, this courtroom. The second was a man who would tolerate no injustice. In other words, a defense attorney. You, Apollo.
Me?
A dark time is coming for our legal system. A twisting of justice brought on by our very own court system. We have to set it right.
Mr. Wright.
Our work lies ahead of us. I, for one, am looking forward to it.
Well, this seems like a good time to announce a verdict. This court finds the defendant, Mr. Phoenix Wright, not guilty. Court is adjourned.
Thanks, Apollo. You came through just like I thought you would. I'm pretty sure I didn't do a thing in there. It was you who called Mr. the killer. I couldn't have done it by myself. You sensed it too today, didn't you? Your ability. Ability? Yes. A sensitivity I lack. You'll come to understand it soon enough. Wait, I wonder if he means... I have one question for the witness then. You say you saw the moment the defendant hit the victim? Is this true? Of course it's true. What's this weird vibe I'm getting? What was that, Mr. Wright? You'll have to find the answer to that question yourself. The answer. Right. Today was full of questions without answers. Most of them about Mr. Gavin. What possible reason could he have had to commit murder? Perhaps you'll learn that in the days to come. What? You don't know, do you? This locket is the key. Well, that reminds me. I met the girls whose picture is in your locket. Your daughter, right? That's right, she's my daughter. You know, you were right about this locket. Huh? I took this off his neck the night he died. It looks like our dear Russian scam artist saw me. So the truth is, the locket really did belong to him. Wait, but that's perjury! You testified. You said that locket was yours. I said no such thing, actually. I merely said that it was a locket with my daughter's picture inside. A subtle distinction, but a distinction nonetheless. And it's the truth. Alright, but then, why? Why was the victim wearing a locket with a picture of your daughter inside it? Sometimes the straightest path to the truth isn't the best one. Give it time. You're still just getting started with your career. Speaking of which, I may be out of a job. I work for Gavin Law Offices after all. Still can't believe I just saw Mr. Gavin get led away in handcuffs. Apollo. Yes? How about coming to work for me? Huh? You mean at the Wright & Co. Law Offices? I mean, there's not a single attorney in my generation that... there's not a single attorney in my generation that doesn't know it. Can't imagine that to be true, but... Wait, but didn't you... You're not a... Oh, I turned in my badge, yes. I'm not an attorney anymore. An incident 7 years ago. That legendary trial. And at the middle of it all was one man, Phoenix Wright. The case reached its sad conclusion, and he left law for good. Have you ever thought about coming back to the courts? I'm not qualified to stand in a court of law, I'm afraid. Didn't you notice in today's trial? There was a single piece of forged evidence. Forged evidence? What are you talking about? I'm talking about evidence that shouldn't have existed. A naughty magician's trick. One piece of evidence struck me as odd, it's true. It just seemed, well, too perfect. But this was the forged evidence. Blech. You mean this, don't you? I got this from your daughter, Mr. Wright. Yes. That car couldn't have been found at the crime scene. Why? Because the killer took it with him when he left, leaving the wrong card in its place, luckily for us. The court can't accept this evidence. It's a fraud. A fraud? How can you be so sure? I would think the only person who could claim it was a fraud would be the one who took the real card from the crime scene, the real killer. The verdict was already handed down 7 years ago. Then, you really... Yes, I forged this card. One look at the crime scene should have told you it wasn't real. But you can't do something like that and call yourself an attorney. Who's calling themselves an attorney, Apollo? So it's true. The rumor is true. 7 years ago. None of that matters much now, does it? I punched him. It's your story from here on out, Apollo. Perhaps I can help you turn the next page. My office's address. Drop in if you like. Mr. Wright. Oh, about your uppercut. Try yelling, "Take that" next time. I find it packs a little more punch. And Apollo, thanks for today. Had a good time. And with that, Mr. Wright walked out the door. And that's how my first trial ended. A lot of mysteries went unsolved. And at the time, I had no idea they were all related. Every mystery that day, connected by a single thread of logic. I'd find that out soon enough. My name is Apollo Justice, attorney at law, and this is how my story begins. Ugh. That may well be where your story begins, Apollo, but this is where my stream ends. If I can find the right goddamn thing here. Anyway, that'll be all for now, and I'll be back tomorrow with more. I would have been back later on this afternoon, but I don't really see the point of doing that now. Today. So for now, though, bye.